series in Genesis, and we'll be finishing out Genesis chapter 1 today, and examining what does it mean to be made in the image of God. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for how you will treat others around you, how you look at yourself? What does that mean? We are in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, and we'll go through chapter 2, verse 3. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And every beast of the earth, and every bird of the heavens, and everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. Let's pray. Father, thank you for showing us this in your word. Thank you that you have made us in your image. Father, I pray that you bless us as we study this and see what it means, that we are blessed in your image, or that we are made in your image, and the blessing which you have given us. Father, I pray that you would help us to see how this means we should treat others, how we have worth and value in your eyes because of you making us this way. And Father, I also pray that we would take seriously that you did rest, and that we should rest also, and take time to worship. Father, thank you for all that you will do, and I pray you would apply your word to our hearts. It's in the name of Jesus Christ that we pray. Amen. We see in this account that God created man in his own image. And one interesting thing about the creation account is that God tells us this. We have Moses write it for us twice. We have this overview of God creating man in his own image. And then in chapter 2, it goes through again and shows how God created man. That he, formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed life into him. And then he made Eve out of the rib of the man. And that is next week. And next week we'll be looking at how does that apply to our understanding of marriage. And especially with everything going on in our culture nowadays. But that is next week. This week, we'll be looking at what is the image of God. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? Let's dive into the text then and see. First of all, we come to the creation in verse 26 and 27. It says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So here we see God speaking. Interestingly enough, God speaks in the plural. He says, "Let us make in our image." And of course, this has probably killed a lot of trees to make books writing about what does this mean. And there's different views about what this is. Some see this as a hint of the Trinity. That, we know God is triune, so of course God is going to speak in the plural here. But God doesn't speak in the plural all over the Bible. It's something that we don't see very often. Some see it as a plural of majesty. Have you noticed how sometimes when kings or queens will talk, they'll use the plural and say, we decide that we will do this or that or some other. That is called the plural of majesty. Some might see it as a reference to a heavenly council of angels, that God is taking counsel with the angels, but we know that God doesn't need anyone's counsel. God doesn't need advice on what he does because he is perfect. He knows what he's doing. And then some that want to say that this isn't real, it's just a leftover from old polytheism, that they had come out of that, and when they wrote this, they didn't quite get it all scrubbed out. But we know that's not true. So what does it mean? Well, we can maybe see a hint of the Trinity, but we also need to realize that the Jews had no idea of the Trinity. They didn't know about the Trinity. And so God did use the plural when he did this, and it leaves room for the Trinity. But ultimately, we're not quite sure why they did this, why it was written this way. And then God gave them dominion over the animals and the earth. You see, man was intended to rule over the earth. We were to be God's vice regents here on earth, that we would be overseeing it for him, being his representatives, that we would have dominion over the animals, dominion over creation. And you see that worked out in that God actually gave Adam and Eve work to do. They were to work in the garden, to keep it, to cultivate it, and all of those things. And that God had given him things to do. And so work is not something that came about because of the fall. Work is not something that is a result of sin. It's the strain of work. It is the strenuousness of work that came out as a result of sin, that God intended us to be workers the whole time. That God made us to work. Work is a good thing. Work is dignifying for us. But we have been given dominion over the world. Now, those of you that work with cattle probably know that that dominion isn't perfect anymore. That they don't always want to do what you want them to do. In fact, we made it to a little bit of a fair this last week, and you'd see guys trying to lead around those 1,200-pound or whatever they are steers. If that steer doesn't want to go, there's not much you can do. If it decides to stop, you have to try and motivate it to go forward. But still, you can see even there, while man has dominion over the beasts of the earth, it ain't perfect anymore. That it isn't perfect. They still resist us. Or how many of you can walk right up to a deer and pet it if you want to? It's going to run away from you. We don't have that perfect dominion anymore because of what sin has done. And then God, he emphasized creating man in his image. We see this in verse 27. It's a poetic structure. And it says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. And in this bit of poetry, we see a few things. First of all, God really, really wants to emphasize we are made in his image. Secondly, it is not only the male gender that is made in God's image, it is both man and woman. That here it says male and female, God created them. That God has created both man and woman in his own image. Every single human being is a bearer of God's image. Every single human being has worth because they are a bearer of God's image. So if we know that God has created man in his image, this means all human life has worth. All human life is sacred. All of it is. That is why murder is wrong. That is why God put a prohibition on murder. That is why you see so many standing up against abortion, because that is human life, and human life is sacred. All human life bears the image of God. That is why we should respect human life. But even short of murder or abortion, how are you treating other people? Sometimes we might treat them as just something to be used for our own ends. We might treat them as a slave, or treat them as too low for someone as dignified as we are. How are we treating others? Because every single person is made in God's image. Every single person that walks on the face of the earth has worth in God's eyes. Every single person, regardless of age, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of even religion, they all bear God's image. They all bear an image of God. And what is this image like? We're going to jump into that. Well, we see a hint of it in Genesis 5. Genesis 5 is a genealogy where it goes through and lists the descendants of Adam. And we see that Adam had a son, Seth. But what does it say? It says that Adam bore a son in his own image and likeness. And that you see it as something passed down like a family resemblance, like father, like son sort of thing. So what is this image? What does it mean to be made in God's image? And what makes it hard to know exactly what it is Genesis tells us we are made in God's image, but then doesn't go on to tell us what that image is. We see a little hint of it that right after God said he was going to make us in his image, that then humankind is given dominion over the earth. Now, there's 3 different theories on what that means. The first is the substantive. That means it's part of our makeup. That the image is something in who we are and how God created us. And so some would look at it like that we have intellect, emotions, and will. That those 3 things make up the image of God. But I think it could go even a little further than that, in that we all can do things a little bit like God does. When you look at the attributes of God, there are some that only God holds, like being infinite. I'm finite. I am not infinite. I cannot mirror God in that way. But God is loving. And while I am not perfect at loving, I can love others and in that way reflect who God is. That God is all-knowing. Will we ever be all-knowing? No. But can we know things? Yes. Can we research and learn and do all of those things and reflect in who God is? Yes, that I believe can be part of bearing God's image. Creativity, making art, all of those things. We see God's creativity all around us. You know, you look up in the sky and you can see God's handiwork in the stars. And in fact, there's probably going to be a lot of people looking at the sky because we're in the middle of a meteor shower right now. You can see those meteors coming through and burning up and all of that. That we can see God's handiwork all around us. Now, can I create the universe? No. Can I do, a little painting that, maybe would look good on a refrigerator? Me, maybe not. But some people can do that. Some people are very creative. And others aren't, but that we reflect God's attributes in that way. Now, some of them we can't reflect, but some of them we can. And I believe that is part of God's image. Others looked at the image as not something within us, but something that occurs whenever we have a relationship. So, say whenever Shannon and I would talk and maybe have a deep heart-to-heart or something like that, that in relationship is showing the image of God, and even more so when we are showing a relationship with God in us, when we are communicating with Him. And this was put out there by philosophers that looked at things that it's not the stuff that matters, it's relationships and those sorts of things. Or they were existentialists, so they looked at existence is what is important. That is through existence that we are showing this. And then the third one is the functional. And this is where they would look at dominion, that when we function in that way, we are bearing God's image. Now, I think as we look at this, the one that is best is that it is a part of us. Now, the outworkings of it does allow us to have a relationship with other people and with God. It does allow us to have dominion over the earth. So in a way, those two were right, but just didn't go far enough. They are an outworking of the image, not the image itself. And so as we are made in God's image, we can relate with other people. We can relate with God. And it is what sets us apart from just being any other animal. It's what makes us different from the animal kingdom. Makes us different from God's other creation is that we bear His image. And that does lead then to the functions and to the relationships to get to know who He is. So if it is a part of us, that means every single human being has the image of God. So it is not something that stops when we can no longer function or have relationships. That means that those that say are in a car accident and become brain dead, even though they cannot carry on relationship or carry on the role of dominion, they still bear the image of God. Or even going in the reverse direction. That means that a child who is still in the mother's womb, even though they cannot communicate, except some may say they can communicate through heartburn or something like that, but even though they can't communicate or hold dominion over anything because they're not grown up yet, they still bear God's image. They still bear the image of their Creator and are still like Him. So let's trace this through the Bible a little bit, through some representative texts. We're just in one. Let's look at Genesis chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. It says, "This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, He made him in the likeness of God. Male and female, He created them, and He blessed them and named them man." Which, in case you wonder, in the Hebrew language, the word Adam is Adam's name, but it's also like our word human. It can go both ways. Except we don't tend to name people human. But, let's see, He named them man when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, He fathered a son in His own likeness, after His image, and named him Seth. And there you see that Adam, he bore a son in His image and likeness. Now, the sad thing is, does that mean Seth has the image of God? Yes. Well, that's not the sad thing. The sad thing is, he also bears Adam's sin nature. That our sin nature is something that we inherit. It's not the kind of inheritance we want, but it's inheritance we get. And so this shows us God making man in His image. And then the last one in the Old Testament is Genesis 9:6. And this is where it is just after the flood, and God is instituting human government. And He says, now, I want there to be a punishment for murder. And so He says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in His own image. And so what God is saying here is that capital punishment is appropriate for murder because human life is so sacred. If you take human life in murder, you have forfeited your own. That human life is so sacred that if you take it out of malice, if you take it in murder, then you forfeit your own life. That you have given up your own life. That is all that there is in the Old Testament, but we see a few things in the New Testament about it. 1 Corinthians 11:7. Now, this finds itself in a section, in a passage that would take a whole sermon or more to explain. It is talking about head coverings and why a woman should pray with her head covered and a man should not, and all of that. And without going into too much detail, I believe it's not talking about a scarf over the head, but more other things. We'd have to dive into the culture and all of that. So we're not going there, but we are looking at the instance of where He is talking about man being made in God's image. So 1 Corinthians 11:7 says, "For a man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman is the glory of man." What Paul is doing is going back to creation. That he does this in other parts too. And I believe what he's trying to say here is that woman was made second. She was made as a helper for man, and so there's some difference in relationship and authority there. But notice, he does not say that the woman was not made in the image of God. And in the Old Testament, God makes it really clear that woman is made in God's image also. It is not just the man that is made in God's image. James 3:9 also talks about this. James 3:9 says, with it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. He's talking about cursing, how we use our tongues for good and evil, and that's not right. He says that you use your tongue, you praise God, and then you go and curse your brother. And why is that wrong? He is made in the likeness of God. So cursing a brother is not right, or sister, or any human being for that matter, is not right because they are made in the image of God. They are made in God's likeness. And then Acts 17, he doesn't come right out and say it, but when Paul is preaching to the Athenians and talking with them, he says something that matches up real close with it. Acts 17:28. And he says, for in him, talking about God, we live and move and have our being. As even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. We are created by him. In him we live and move and have our being. That in a roundabout way, it's like he is saying that we are made in God's image. And then we come to some different texts in the New Testament that talk about being made into the image of Christ. Now, how is this different? I think is that we will see we are perfected when we are conformed to the image of Christ. We still bear the image of God, but when we make it to heaven, if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, He is already working in your life to make you more and more like Jesus Christ. He is working in you to make you more and more righteous. And then, when we finally make it to heaven, we will be perfected into conforming to the image of Christ. And we will be what perfect humanity should be. It's like a Romans 8:29. And as we're looking there, I've heard or read some saying in commentaries and such doing research for this that we can look to Christ to see what the image of God is, to see how He was the perfect human. And while I believe that's true, we also have to be careful because Christ is the God-man. He is 100% God and 100% man. And so, yes, He is a perfect human, but He's also God. So, can a perfect human calm the storm? Well, no. Christ did that because He's God. So there are some things there that wouldn't match up, but looking at how He acted, how He treated others, being righteous, then yes. Romans 8:29 says, for those whom He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, in order that He might be the firstborn among many brothers. Those who are saved, their destiny is to be conformed to be like Christ. You may be frustrated with your life today. You may think, you know what, I keep trying to live the Christian life. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to do what I know is right, and I keep failing. And you know what? You will keep failing as long as you're here on this earth. You will notice a trend towards the better, but you won't be perfect. But eventually, you will be found righteous, standing in God's presence. Eventually, you will conform to be like Christ. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 3:18. 2 Corinthians 3:18. And we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. See, from one degree to another, slowly over time, we are being conformed more and more to Christ's image. We look at Ephesians chapter 4, verses 23 and 24. And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. Here Paul talks about your old life and your new life as a believer. That it's almost like clothes. You take off the old, you put on the new. That the new life is being conformed to who Christ is. And then also Colossians 3:10 has the same idea in it. And so this image, it is we are made in God's image. We share of His attributes. But like I said, it also works out in our dominion, in keeping dominion over the earth. And this word also is used of idols or other representations. When you saw kings in that time, they would establish their authority over different realms by putting a statue of themselves there. It's like even though they weren't there, their authority existed there. And sometimes you can get a little bit of the same idea that God made us in His image, and then when He gave us dominion, it is exercising His rule. Now we are His representatives. And because we are sinful, we do a lousy job of it now. But that before the fall, we would have done a good job. So someday we will be totally conformed to Christ. That someday we will be like Him. And He is the only perfect human that ever lived His total life here on earth. Adam and Eve, perfect before the fall, they never sinned until they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But we see that Jesus lived a perfect life, His whole life here. That until He died and rose again, He never sinned. He never once sinned and did what was wrong. Then we come to the blessing, verses 28 through 31 of Genesis chapter 1. God made them, and then He blessed them. We see He also does this to the animal life, that He gave them a blessing. But here He speaks directly to them. So that God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." And so God blessed them, and He blessed them with procreation, that they were supposed to fill the earth with more humans, and that they were supposed to exercise dominion over the earth. And that the two are related, that they can better exercise dominion when there's more of them. But God blessed them with that, and then He also gave them food. And God said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, and you shall have them for food. And every beast of the earth, and every bird of the heavens, and everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God gave them food, and this is so different from the creation accounts of the cultures around them. I believe it's the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the gods, they got tired of all the noise that humans were doing, and so they sent a flood. And one man was able to survive the flood because God warned him about it, so he built a boat. And there's where you see the flood narrative that is also a part of all sorts of other cultures, which you would expect if there was a flood over the whole earth. You would expect there to be other stories about it. But they looked at human beings would serve the gods by feeding them. And so when, I believe his name was Atrahasis, but I'm not quite sure, when he survived the flood, he then made a sacrifice to the gods, and it was said that they were so hungry that they swarmed the sacrifice like flies. And yet we see God is so different. He is the one providing food. That the story we have in the Bible, He created, He made it, and He provided food for humans, not that they were doing it for Him. That God provided them this lush garden, every tree bearing fruit that they could eat of, that all except one tree. That God richly provided for them. He provided for the animals. That He gave them food also. So God blessed humanity with everything they needed. He blessed them. He gave them provision to fill the earth, to fulfill the command He had given them, to exercise dominion, all of those things. And God set them in this perfect garden where they would have plenty, where they could serve Him. They were in a perfect environment. And I'm sure you all know the story that they failed. They sinned. Even in a perfect environment, they chose to rebel against God. But God had provided them with everything they needed. Now we have to work even harder for it. Now instead of enjoyable work, it's by the sweat of your brow, fighting the thorns and briars and all those things that get in the way, that we now, it's harder to exercise dominion. It is harder to do that. Finally, we switch gears. That God made human beings in His image, gave us dominion. Then we see in chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, that God rested. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished His work that He had done, and He rested on the seventh day from all His work that He had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all His work that He had done in creation. Now, those of you that took the class that we had on how to interpret the Bible, did you notice something there? What do you look for when you're looking at a passage? One of the things you look for is repetition, and you see it all over that passage. What is God trying to emphasize? That He had finished His work of creation, and He rested. That on the seventh day, God rested from His work. That He sanctified this day. He set it apart as holy. And that this is the basis for the Sabbath day that we see in the Ten Commandments. In Exodus 28 through 11, God told them that every seventh day they were to rest and do no work. And their slaves weren't to do any work. Their animals were to do no work. Any foreign person in the country was to do no work on the Sabbath day, because God had set it aside as holy. Now in the New Testament, this is no longer true. We worship God on Sunday, not Saturday. That's the seventh day. This is the first day of the week. Now we worship Him on Sunday, and also in Colossians 2:16, Paul tells them that Sabbaths are one of those things we're not supposed to judge each other for. So if you have a brother or sister in Christ that believes Sunday is the Sabbath, we aren't to do any work on Sunday, you know what? Don't criticize them for that. And if you, on the other hand, believe that Sunday is the Sabbath and we should do no work on Sunday, don't criticize your brother or sister that doesn't view it that way. That Paul said in Colossians 2:16, we're not supposed to judge each other on that point, not on Sabbaths. And yet we have rest in Christ. We can rest from our labors of trying to please God, of trying to keep the law, that we have rest in Him. So God rested from His work. But you know what? He didn't rest because He was tired. It's not that the work of creation took Him out and He needed a day off. It is an example to us that we should take time to rest and we should take time to worship. We need to make sure we are taking that, not as a form of legalism, but as a form of God made us and He made us to need rest. He made us to need to worship Him, and we need to do that. So in conclusion, you bear God's image. You bear the image of the Creator, the ruler, the King of all the universe. So you have worth. You are made in His image and are different than animals. You are different than those other things. And so you have worth because of that, and you can glorify God because you can reflect who He is to other people. So let me ask you, are you maybe suffering from a thinking that, I'm not good enough for anything, I can't serve God, I can't do anything for Him? You know what? You were made in His image, and you have worth. But then on the flip side, how are you treating other people? Because everyone is made in God's image. And everyone deserves our respect. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, because they have dignity because of God making them in His image. That gives every human being dignity. Every human being was made in His image. Let's pray. Father, thank You for this text, and thank You for giving us this dignity of being made in Your image. Thank You that we can know you, that we can commune with you, that we can have that relationship, that we can exercise dominion over the earth. And Father, that we can reflect who you are to other people. That you are love and we can show love. You have intelligence and we can have knowledge and know things and figure things out. And Father, I pray that this would make a difference to us in how we treat others and how we think of ourselves, because we were made in your image. And Father, I pray if there's anyone here that doesn't know you, Father, I pray that your Spirit will convict them of their sin, of your righteousness, and that you will judge. And Father, that you would bring them to yourself, that you would draw them, and that they would put their faith in you. Father, we pray all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.